Happy Presidents, everybody. Welcome to Two Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin, your traveling correspondent, eager to have a conversation with you, infused with peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace for all, and the latest news and information. Thank you for coming back another week. It is a holiday, but there is a fair amount of news, not as much maybe as there have been on some other days. Donald Trump had no public events today. He went to his golf course and got an ovation when he got out of the car, but otherwise not seen, but definitely heard on a variety of fronts. I think there's three big stories, which I'll kind of run through, and then some little ones. And then we'll have our guests, former Illinois Congressman Lipinski and Mr. Mr. Castellanos, both here, one Republican, one Democrat, to talk through um, uh, everything. And as always, we want to take your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, we'd welcome you to raise your hand. If you've never raised your hand before, and I see some new folks on already, please do. Please be to make tonight the night. Join us by raising your electronic hand if you're watching on two-way, or rather YouTube or X. Don't raise your hand, but feel free to contribute to the chat as long as you adhere to our founding principles and don't write smack in there. Um, First big story is what's going on in Saudi Arabia and Europe regarding the accelerating peace talks conversations between the United States and Russia and Ukraine and Saudi Arabia, and largely excluding the Europeans who are upset about that. Second is our usual melange of DOGE stories with a particular focus on Musk's attempts to gain access to IRS data and the alarm that's causing. And then in Gotham City, major developments in the question of Mayor Adams and whether he will stay on as mayor or have any chance at all to win re-election. It is a local New York story, but it has national implications in part because of the Justice Department deal with Mayor Adams, and also because, let's be real, it's New York City. So again, I'll run through some details on those, show you a few elements, and then we'll bring Dan Lipinski and Alex in, and then your questions. And again, grateful to you for being part of the conversation tonight. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor, and some other American officials, including the president's favorite peace negotiator, are all in Saudi Arabia. They met today, Monday, with Saudi officials, and tomorrow, first high-level meeting of this kind on any topic between the United States and Russia in quite some time. No telling where those conversations will go, but they are a source of a lot of agita in Europe, where the Europeans are wondering what exactly is going on, what the situation will be in terms of the settlement. Continue to be talk about the possibility of European troops serving as peacekeeping forces of some sort in the aftermath of the settlement. And the Europeans are kind of wondering why it is that they're being asked to play that role, or in light of the fact that they're asking to play that role or offering to play that role, so American forces don't have to do it, why they're being cut out of the discussions. The president talked to the head of France about this situation as the French convened an emergency meeting of European powers to talk about, again, their conception of where this is headed. So there's obviously a lot of untold elements of this story, and I'm curious what they are. But the reality is the talks tomorrow in Saudi will be very key. And again, a lot of Europeans are wondering why it is that the Saudis are at the table here in such a robust fashion. So that's one story. We'll talk more about that with Alex and Congressman Lipinski. Second, DOGE. Again, I'm just going to make it a practice, ordinarily not to run every lawsuit result until we get to the Supreme Court. I think most of these things are interim. You had some decisions in the last 24 hours going for the president and DOGE, some against, but Elon Musk marches on, including, again, an attempt to get access to data at the IRS, which is making some people unhappy. And this is one of these issues that flips things on their head. Republicans, for the most part, have been the party against privacy violations by the IRS, and yet now it's the Democrats who are complaining about the prospect of the specter of Musk and his associates rifling through private taxpayer data. I also heard one Republican member of the House today talk favorably about the notion of the IRS finding a fraud again not your typical Republican talking point of the last 10 years, where they have suggested that IRS agents empowered to go through taxpayer records to look for fraud were in fact violating people's individual rights. So you have that. President today tweeted or went on Truth Social, I should say, and reposted some posts favorable about Congressman Byron Donalds, who's musing about running for governor of Florida, as is Matt Gaetz, as are others. These are an interesting question because the president very close to both Matt Gaetz and Byron Donalds. I would say, if I may use the cliche, no love lost between those two gentlemen. One a current member of the House, one a former member. Both better known in two-way circles than they are in Florida. Neither of them, I think, has a massive statewide reputation. And there'll almost certainly be other candidates for this race. Ron DeSantis is term limited, but if the president endorses a Republican in the primary, that person will probably be governor. And so people look at his tweeting or reposting on Truth Social to post favorable about Donalds as a pretty big tea leaf. It doesn't mean he's endorsing him, but it does suggest he likes him, favorable towards him. And I'll be curious to know if Matt Gaetz has any point of view about that. All right, there's a ton of other stuff. Lots of back and forth on social media, some Republican on Republican, some Republican on Democrat. I'm not particularly inclined to go through those. They all are on the periphery of what's going on with Donald Trump. There is a lot of MAGA energy regarding the media, particularly hostility towards CBS, hostility towards the Associated Press. And I continue to point you to this reality that these news organizations that for decades were aligned with the Democratic Party implicitly, in some cases quite overtly, are weaker than they were before. Their audience size is down, their influence over the national debate is lower, their capacity to inspire energy and enthusiasm in MAGA is quite high. The left's comfort with them or satisfaction with them is lower because they see punches being pulled. So MAGA looks at CBS News, say, or the New York Times, and says they're still crazily biased against Donald Trump. And the left looks at them and says, with evidence in some cases, particularly I'd say the New York Times, these places are no longer fighting Donald Trump every day in the trenches. They are writing sentences and paragraphs and whole stories that you wouldn't have seen previously about Donald Trump and the people around him. Favorable profiles that we talked the other day about. The New York Times published a very favorable profile of Charlie Kirk. That would not have happened before. And so the right looks at that and says, whatever, they say we can point to 17 other stories in the New York Times today that are negative towards Trump and biased against Trump. And the left says, look at the New York Times. They're now dropping all principle and supporting writing, pieces to getting good with the Trump administration. So this was an asymmetrical advantage of the Democrats for a really long time. It's still an asymmetrical advantage, but its value, its currency, its capacity to help Democrats win news cycles, it's nothing like it's ever been in any of our lifetimes. And I'm a pretty sophisticated measurer of this reality, but I can tell you there's not a calipers in the world with enough sensitivity to tell you if it used to be here like at 11, where is it now? Is it 9? Is it 6? Is it 2? I don't know myself, and I'll be watching it very closely because, again, it's something that's been worth trillions of dollars to Democrats, and it's something that they don't necessarily have anymore. All right, New York City, lastly. New York City Mayor Adams is still the mayor. He says he's still running for re-election, but his chances now of making it to the end of his term are diminished by the actions taken today, where 4 of his 8, I think, deputy mayors resigned. And there's a lot of disquiet around him as these officials are it's not totally transparent why they don't want to be part of the government anymore. Adams, in an attempt to save himself, made this deal with Donald Trump and the Justice Department that is not going over well with New York City Democrats, who are now worried that he will use his remaining months in office to dance to the tune of Donald Trump. And in New York City, that's not popular. The head of the city council today called for Adams to step down. He doesn't have to step down, no matter how many people call for him to step down. But I think we're reaching critical mass, and I think we're also probably not 100%, but probably on the precipice of a number of senior Black elected officials and activists and union members, privately at first and then publicly telling him he should step down. Um, and and that will be more impactful on him because they'll also tell him they won't support him for reelect. And does he want to serve out his term if he's not going to be reelected? Don't know the answer to that, but it's possible he wants to find some safe harbor out of there. And it's possible he could make a different type of deal. Now, it's still not clear to me, and I've talked to a lot of people about it. I've read a lot about it. It's not clear to me why the Trump administration made this deal with Adams. It comes with something of a cost because there are a lot of conservatives and conservative legal experts who think this deal, as I do, is amongst the worst things Donald Trump's administration has done. And it doesn't really mean Adams is going to perform, particularly obviously if he's not there. But it's not clear that they got much out of it, and the downside's quite apparent. Some people think they're happy to have the fight with the Justice Department and the lawyers who resigned over this because they want to set an example, and they're happy to set it in the Southern District to say if we the main justice can stand up to the Southern District, every other career prosecutor in any U.S. attorney's office better be aware that if you don't do what the main justice says, you're going to be forced out of and have your career ruined. So it's possible that they think this is a positive for them. But I'll say again, I've thought for a while, said it many times, Eric Adams, worse mayor than Bill de Blasio. Said for a while, I didn't think he'd be reelected. Tonight, it seems far-fetched to be reelected, less likely to serve out his term than he is to be reelected. But it does raise the question of who will be the mayor of New York City. Today, it would be Andrew Cuomo. And as long as Adams was in the race, it made it harder for anyone of significance to rise up to run against Cuomo. The other people in the race are not significant players. That many of them are too far to the left for even the New York City electorate, and none of them have the name ID, the fundraising capacity, the organizational chops to, I think, effectively challenge Cuomo. If Adams is forced out of the race, you may see someone else big get in. Don't know who that would be, but you may see that. Now, again, if you're not from New York City, you might wonder why I'm wasting your time on this. It's New York City, and it's significant, and as the biggest city, but also, again, it is all tied up in what the Trump administration did to Adams, and that's partly why he's currently in a bit of trouble. All right, I want to show you a couple things, and then we'll bring in the Congressman Lipinski and Alex. This is Tom Hanks last night. I love the Saturday Night Live special. I thought the Friday night show of music from Radio City and the show last night from 30 Rock were masterpieces of television production. As someone who's worked in television production, thought they were just spectacular, and I thought they were very entertaining. And as a fan of the show, I enjoyed it. They stayed largely away from politics. There were probably 5 jokes even loosely connected to the Trump administration and the current politics of the country. But Tom Hanks, appearing in a recurring sketch that they've done before, Black Jeopardy, said something appeared like playing like a dumb redneck that has caused some consternation on the right. Please roll number 4.
Well, thank you. Hey, now speaking of church, can I say something? If more folks went to church, we wouldn't be in this mess we're in now.
You know what? I agree with you, Doug. I'd like to shake your hand, sir. Here we go.
No,
Oh, no. Oh, no. It's just a handshake. Yeah, it's just a handshake. Yeah, all right. You're welcome in Black Jeopardy anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, my brother. Maybe I'll start a show for you to come on, and we'll call it What Jeopardy?
No. We don't need it. We don't need it.
I cut people a lot of slack for comedy. I thought it was funny, but there's been some blowback on that. What's the other thing I want to show you? As you know, there's a plane crash. Luckily, no one was hurt, but a couple of people, 3 people, including a child, seriously injured in Toronto. And there's already discussion about whether the FAA cuts played a role in that. I don't know enough about any of it to have a point of view on that, but it is obviously disconcerting to have another major plane incident and it will be much discussed. And just to circle back to DOGE, there's incredible awareness on the part of Republicans, including a lot of Republicans in Congress, that the way DOGE is going about doing its business, that they're leaving the administration open to allegations made both by the media and Democrats, perhaps not fully based on the facts, but also fully based on the facts potentially, that rash cuts could lead to loss of life. And I continue to believe that DOGE would be better off for the administration and for the public if they were a lot more transparent about what it is they're doing, and particularly when they're making changes to the government that could have implications for health. I think they're making a big mistake not being more transparent there. All right, let's bring in our guests. Former Illinois Congressman Dan Lipinski is here. He's a regular fan of the program, which makes us happy. And Alex Castellanos, another fan of the program. Well, maybe fan, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. They come regularly and they heckle. Congressman, thank you for joining. Alex, thank you for joining.
Be here.
Alex, that background looks totally real. Is that Florida or somewhere else?
We're down in Florida.
Yeah, it looks incredible. Hope you can get home if you ever decide you want to come home.
I am home. We have the white
Yeah.
stuff here is sand, not snow.
Yeah. Congressman, I'd just love to start with you and just your overview of how you feel about how the administration is approaching Ukraine and Russia, whether you think they're making smart moves or ill-advised moves. How do you see their overall strategy plan, however you view it? Congressman.
I'm having trouble with you breaking up. I don't know if it's me or.
Alex, are you hearing me fine?
I'm hearing you pretty good.
All right,
Okay.
I was having trouble. Okay. So let me.
Can you hear me now, Congressman? All right.
Yes.
I just overview, if you would, how your report card on how the administration is doing regarding dealing with Iran, with Ukraine, Russia, and Europe.
Well, it's really hard to know what's going on right now in Saudi Arabia. It concerns me. I've been a very big supporter of arming Ukraine. I was disappointed. I think the Biden administration seemed to slow walk aid, military aid to Ukraine, just giving them just enough to keep the war going. I have not, unlike my Democratic and Republican colleagues, I have not switched my position on Russia through the years. I remember when, Democrats were saying Russia wasn't a threat. They're, large military, but their economy is terrible. Don't worry about them. And Republicans were saying, yes, we should be worried. And then that flipped when Donald Trump became president. All of a sudden, Republicans were, no, don't worry, and Democrats were concerned. I'm concerned about what Russia wants to do beyond Ukraine. It concerns me that Ukraine is not in on talks right now, but who knows what this is about? Who knows what if the president is, he gets a lot of credit, and sometimes it's deserved, sometimes I'm not sure it is, for being very clever in the moves that he makes. And there's been a lot of talk that, look, the European leaders are now coming forward and saying we're going to do more for Ukraine. All right, so that's good. But where does this all go? The reports about some kind of deal about what Ukraine has to promise the U.S. in terms of access to minerals and to gas, oil. Those are concerning, but like so many things here, there is, despite a lot of talk about transparency, there's not real transparency, and there's so much going on. It's hard to know what really is happening.
Yeah, Alex, thoughts? Thank you, Congressman.
Well, real transparency is not the friend of productive negotiations, so we might give them a little slack on that.
Fair point.
Looks like Russia famously, I think John McCain said, was a gas station with an army. And now Russia is a gas station with an army that can't beat a country that is 1/4 of its size. Russia is sinking. It's more people die in Russia every year than are born. It's depopulating. People don't have children when countries are depressed and dark, which is kind of characteristic of Russian history, but it's certainly true right now. Alcoholism, drug use, and then on top of the depopulating problem, they're fighting a war that has taken 1 million young men out. Um, so the future of Russia is not very bright right now. They are not the enemy they used to be. What Trump, I think, is trying to do is make sure there's not a Russia-China alliance, which we would not want to see. And I think the reason Trump has brought the Saudis to the table is because they pump oil. That's a direct threat to the gas station. And I think that's going to put some heat on Russia. Now, they may walk out of here with the Donbass in the north. They may walk out with productive farmland in the south, and that's what they want. But that may be the price of peace. And Trump is a guy who likes to end wars, not fight them.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. We'll talk more about this if folks have questions about it. Again, if you want to be in on the conversation, you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. You know, one of the things about this platform that we aspire to is to have conversations about things like DOGE that are not just DOGE is horrible or DOGE is great. Because I think it's pretty clear that most Americans have a different view of DOGE, which is some aspects of DOGE are great and some are either horrible or questionable. So let's try to have that conversation now. Alex, what about DOGE is currently worrying you? Stipulating that you're delighted with growth and I mean with cuts and with waste, fraud, and abuse being eliminated. And when I say what troubles you, I don't want you to answer from a political point of view. Where are the risks for the Republican Party? What troubles you for the country in terms of DOGE right now, or worries you?
I will offer a different point of view than perhaps is expected. I am not bothered by the lack of transparency. I think they are moving so fast. Frankly, I'm surprised they're as transparent as they are. If anything, I worry they will not be able to keep up this speed. And there is no alternative. The alternative to doing things this fast is failure. It's to get mired back in the swamp, in the quicksand, and not succeeding. And DOGE ultimately will not be judged if, a cruel way to say it, if they break some eggs, if they cause trauma, if they hurt people. Ultimately, DOGE and Trump will be judged only if they are successful. If they, right now, the US government this country is trying to pedal a bicycle into the future, dragging a boat, and the boat's going the other way. And we have this weight. And if we can unshackle ourselves from that and open up this economy, imagine that money not being taken out of the productive economy to fund unnecessary government expenditures. Imagine that it's there for people to innovate and create with at a time in history where we are doing transformational technological things and moving into a new era. Holy smokes. What a time to water the garden and see what grows here. If Trump is, I think Trump and DOGE are being judged many times as if we were still living in the old world well, neither side, Republican or Democrat, is effective at anything, at least in a positive way. And so we look at the political consequence and judge things on that. No, you don't have the dominant media anymore to destroy an administration, rightly or wrongly. You have a fragmented world. You don't have swing voters being the determinative voters. You have a political realignment now where Black voters, young voters, even women, Hispanics are moving in a different direction. And you're talking to them through social media, the channels that will protect this movement. So my concern is that it's like the war in Israel. And if you don't do it quickly, you can't do it at all. We have no patience for this as a country. And my fear is that Democrats will be effective at really stopping a transformational movement to modernize our government. If we invented government today, would it look anything like what we have now? And the answer is no. Let's take a shot at that. That's what I think Trump is trying to do.
Congressman, what do you like about DOGE?
Well, if I was still in Congress, I'd probably be on the DOGE caucus. The idea of having a more efficient government, we should all be behind. Democrats have been scared to do anything to touch any part of government, and that was a terrible mistake. We all know there's waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. Now, the way it's that Elon Musk and DOGE are going about it, it's really hard to tell that if they are really modernizing, doing anything to modernize, or they're just going at it with a hammer. Instead of going at it with a scalpel and taking out what is bad, what's not needed, and modernizing. As Alex said, that modernization needs to happen. But like many things, unfortunately, that I see with President Trump is, he's pointed to a lot of problems. And I've always been I've said Donald Trump finally brought to the table a lot of problems that Americans are concerned about. And they want to see something done. The problem is, what are really the solutions? And the solutions are difficult. The solutions are not just cutting government workers and that's it, indiscriminately cutting them. Maybe Musk is doing something better than that. It's hard to tell, but there is a big risk here. When you cut employees from the FAA, when you cut people who are in charge of tracking diseases in the country, you cut people in charge of nuclear safety. If something happens, if some kind of disaster happens, whether it's deserved, whether it's really connected to those cuts or not, it could be used. Those cuts could be used to say, look, Trump administration, Donald Trump is responsible for this. And that's a danger. And that makes it more dangerous if you're not going about this. We'll talk about those nuclear safety employees working on nuclear safety. They're trying to get them back because they need them. And this is in Silicon Valley. The government's not a startup. You can't just break it and then start something new. There's a lot of things that need to get done. And I don't want to defend government. I don't want to say government is efficient. We can't cut anywhere. And so that's why I say it's a great idea. Like many of Trump's ideas are great ideas. It just has to be done well and properly.
Let's say President Trump, I asked you to be a two-person DOGE audit committee. Said, I want to make sure they're doing it right, and I want you benefit of your experience. So the two of you have a 30-minute meeting with Musk, and you can ask him whatever you want, make whatever recommendations you want. Alex, what would be on your agenda for that meeting? What questions would you have or comments would you make to him to try to make sure he's doing it right from your point of view?
My first comment would be hurry, because the danger of DOGE failing is greater if they stop hurrying than if they continue at this pace. Though I do agree with the congressman, it would be nice if we could use a scalpel, but government laughs at scalpels. We've tried scalpels for, since Al Gore tried to reinvent government, and Obama tried to downsize. I would tell them to be as transparent as you can possibly be. I think what they're doing, though, is the Silicon Valley version of transparency, which is tell them what you know and then iterate. Next thing you learn, tell them that. Hey, we screwed this up. I would tell them, when you make a mistake, own it. Step up in public and say, we screwed this up. We shouldn't have done this. It'll teach us something, and we're going to be better now because of this, and fix it then. People don't expect perfection. Perfection is seen as false in the world we live in, full of shades of gray. What they do expect is that when you break something, raise your hand, own it, and say, I did it. I'm going to learn something from it. And we're going to be better at doing your work for it.
Before we switch to Congressman Alex, what question or questions would you ask Musk? What are you curious about to get more information to understand what additional recommendations you would have?
Mark, I'm not thinking that way about it in terms of, I don't think he needs to be audited. I think he's dealing with cancerous growth and he's trying to cut it out to save the patient. So, in terms of, I still say own your mistakes, and there should be a hierarchy almost of unpopularity, if possible, not necessarily try to get the nuclear inspectors, the nuclear weapons inspectors, or the FAA first, though people don't know, for example, that for over 10 years, there's been a class action lawsuits of potential, the guys in the tower, what do you call them?
Air traffic
Air
controllers.
traffic controllers, yeah. There's been thousands of them, over 1,000 of them, who are suing because of discrimination because they couldn't pass the DEI standard and were otherwise qualified. You know, that's maybe one reason we have such we don't have a better air traffic control system right now. So, but I do think there's a priority. I think you ought to go after the Department of Defense. That's allegedly a Republican the sainthood, right? That's not something Republicans would touch. Well, this is not Republican. This is American, and that would be a good way to do it. And I think you're going to see that. If this is just Republican despised institutions, i.e. the IRS, it won't work. But if you do it across the board, and you're willing to take on the Republican sacraments, then I think he's got a better shot.
Congressman, what would your questions for and recommendations for Musk be if you had 30 minutes with him?
My questions first would be, how are you making the decisions about where to cut? Are you really, I mean, there needs to be, audits take some time, but you need to understand what is going on. And I find it hard to believe that they really understand where the waste is right now. And so I really want to know how these decisions are being made. I mean, you can't wait too long. I agree with Alex, you can't wait too long, but you can't rush through this, which seems to be what's happening when you have to try to recall workers right after you get rid of them. But defense acquisition is the biggest waste. Now that's a huge monster that needs to be tamed. We need to bring more innovation. I mean, I've been talking for years with people in Silicon Valley who talk about we need to bring more innovation into defense, and acquisition rules are just favor the big guys. And I actually helped create a program in the Department of Defense to try to help bring entrepreneurs in and bring new solutions to problems. And that's one thing that we definitely need to do. So I think there is a tremendous amount. Elon Musk obviously is incredibly intelligent. He knows about technology, where technology can really be used to figure out where the problems are, and also how to do things better, how to make processes more efficient in government. But the biggest thing that concerns me is the falsehoods that come out that he seems to keep perpetuating. It doesn't give me confidence when Elon Musk comes out and says anything that then does not really appear to be true or appear to be the case. I mean, starting with the bill back in December that talked about how much the pay for members of Congress was being increased, in other things in that bill, and that just that brings down my confidence in what's going on.
Yeah, I agree
think
with you.
one
Go
thing
ahead,
the
Al.
congressman said that I agree with is that using technology is an important advance here. And I think that's not just in what government does, but in what Musk is using. In the old world, you'd look at these records and you'd have no idea. You'd have to audit them for centuries to try to find out what's going on. Well, one of the kids who is coding and doing all of this stuff is the kid who deciphered scrolls that had been impenetrable from Pompeii, that have been impenetrable for centuries. And you sick AI and these bright minds that know how to use it on a system like Social Security, and you find all of a sudden, wait, we may have millions of people who are dead who are getting Social Security. That's criminal. And that's a criminal offense, not only against American taxpayers who've paid into Social Security, but to the people who are receiving Social Security now. So it's happening differently, and it can happen perhaps with an alacrity that we're not used to because of the tech these guys have. I think that the congressman is right. That puts a greater burden on Musk to be forthright about this stuff and to be open about it as soon as he can. I think they're trying to do that, but he's riding the whirlwind right now. He is moving at a speed we've not seen. And again, I worry that anything less than that will doom the entire effort.
Yeah.
That's
Please
the
raise your hand.
strategy I'd use, by the way, if you want to stop Musk. You can't stop him. Slow him down, and that will stop him.
Please raise your hand if you want to get in on the conversation. If you're here on the two-way platform, eager to hear from lots of you. Last question. I can ask you about New York City Mayor. Congressman, is there a Democrat, and if so, who you think is speaking adroitly, passionately, effectively as a loyal opposition to Donald Trump? Is there anybody you're hearing that you think, yeah, that person seems to have an understanding of the electorate and of the moment?
Yeah, so many Democrats just really, especially if they're around in a first Trump term. I criticize this all the time back then. Just going over the top on everything. No one listens to you anymore. So who's out there right now? I don't know anyone in Washington besides that. Obviously, John Fetterman has. I think he's gotten a lot of credibility because he's been willing to, say he's happy with some of the things that Trump is doing. He's been willing to criticize Democrats. And unless anyone else Democrats going to step forward and be that way and look like they're, not just spinning, not just being part of the Democratic team, that's what needs to happen. If any Democrat is going to be listened to by those outside the tribe.
Yeah. Alex, do you see any Democrat you think gets the joke at this point?
For national level or for mayor of New York?
And anybody who you think is
I know you don't like Fetterman, Mark. I know you think he doesn't have potential. I know you don't.
Not true.
Confess.
Not
Go
true.
ahead, confess. Say it.
I don't know potential. I don't know if you think he'd be president, but I think he's doing the things that Trump are doing. Steve Elmendorf's 3 A's: authenticity, action, and I can never remember the third, attention. So he's one of the few Democrats doing all 3 A's. So I don't minimize him at all.
I think I know. Just gigging. I don't see a Democrat out there because I think their party has been reduced to its most left-wing core, I think. Yeah. And so I don't see that out there, but I think that's one of the necessary steps before something more moderate toward the center emerges and posts up against that and has a Sister Souljah moment that says that was wrong. So could that be a Shapiro? Yeah. Could that be a Fetterman? Yeah. Could Trump appoint himself mayor of New York? Yeah.
All right, let's bring in folks again. Thanks to the congressman and to Alex for being part of tonight. Tom, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, please. After you unmute, of course. There you go.
All right. Yeah, I'm calling from Northern California, and what's on my mind is you asked what we would ask Elon if if we wanted to hold him accountable. I would just ask him, hey, this budget is a $7 trillion budget, and it's great that you're tweeting out these findings of a few million here or 100 million there. We have a multi-trillion-dollar deficit. This is not going to do it. What is your plan to get us to at least a budget neutral, or maybe don't even just don't increase the deficit? What he's doing now, it's like this window dressing, this kabuki theater. You fire a bunch of federal workers. If you fired them all, it would be 4% of the total budget. So if you fire 10% of them, it would be 0.4% savings. So, this narrative that, oh, we're going to get rid of all these bureaucrats and he's making, running the country like a business. It's not true. We are spending more than we're taking in. And this is math. And, hourly tweets about, oh, we found condoms going to Hamas is not going to solve our problems. It's all about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, paying on interest. Where's the plan?
Well, true. Alex.
Elon was actually talking about this the other day. And right now, what the deficit is going to be a couple of trillion, which is more money than I have in my pocket at the moment. And if he can cut 1 trillion in wasteful spending, and if we can grow the economy, in part because of these spending cuts, because we move money from the non-productive part of the economy to where it grows, the outside economy, if the economy grows another trillion, then you could get to net neutral. And he did the math on that, and it was pretty impressive. So growth and spending cuts do matter. And I will take exception to the view that if you don't save pennies, you'll save dollars. If you get rid of the bureaucrats, you may also be able to get rid of the hundreds of millions of dollars the bureaucrats spend. So there's real money there. When in a business, when you get rid of a department, when you get rid of people, it's not just the expense of paying them, it's the expense of what they were doing. So I think if you can downsize government, to borrow a popular phrase during the Clinton administration, you can actually make a difference. And more importantly, you'll get taxpayer support, American support for a smaller government, because they see that if you care about the pennies, $100, right? If you save 20, 30 billion dollars, that's a few $100 for the average American. But that's a meal. That's a night out. That's a tank of gas for your truck to get to work. So I think if Democrats are selling the argument that this won't make a difference, and that is understood as we're going to continue to waste your money on these things, I don't think they'll make a lot of political progress.
Congressman.
If you're spending your time saving pennies, you're not spending your time saving the dollars. It just goes along with, unfortunately, my disappointment with President Trump in his first term. Look, I have to say, in Donald Trump's first term, 2017 was the most outreach. As a Democratic member of Congress in my 16 years, there was more outreach from the White House in 2017 than any other year I was there, including under President Obama. There was a lot of outreach. and nothing really much, nothing came of it. I mean, on infrastructure, on taxes. There's a lot of outreach to Democrats, and I thought things. I had hope. I couldn't say this out loud. I was in enough trouble already with my party, but I had hope then. But unfortunately, so much I see is about messaging, and it strikes people. Donald Trump's a great showman. He knows how to send the right messages. Most people think now that a lot of illegal immigrants are being rounded up and being deported, and the numbers aren't really that significant. But there's a big splash made of it. Elon Musk talks about, I found this wasteful program. I got rid of these employees. And people think there's actually something happening when there's not nearly as much happening. But it's what a good showman does. He knows what grabs people's attention, and you get, especially early on. Let's see what happens. And people keep saying Republicans are going to cut $2 trillion. Elon Musk, DOGE is going to cut $2 trillion, and I'd love to see it, but I don't see it as Tom. You said I don't see a plan really for that right now. I mean, give them time, but I still don't see that plan. I don't think much is really happening. It's more a vibe. Just as Kamala Harris was criticized for running a vibe campaign, I mean, Donald Trump's a lot about vibe, and some of that it helps. It's helpful in some ways, and you have to be, as president, you have to be someone who is sort of rallying people behind things, but you also have to do real action, and we'll see what happens if there really are. We really do cut the deficit, but I'm not seeing that happening so far.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
I will point out that we may not be deporting as many people as average folks think, but maybe in part because of that, illegal immigration is way down in nothing flat.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. And I think
I'm agreeing with exactly what you said.
Yeah.
The showman part of it does have an impact.
Yeah. Zach, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, please. Thank you for joining.
Hi, folks. I live in Oakland, California. I was a Harris supporter in the election. And can I just say broadly what's on my mind and then ask a more specific question?
Yeah, take your time because I'm eating some M&Ms, so take all the time you need.
Okay. Smoking a cigar.
Yeah, so I feel kind of isolated right now because I feel like I have more understanding of Trump voters than most people in California, or at least in the Bay Area, or at least the people I know. And a lot of the people outside of California from the Boston area. And so it's just, it is a lot of like this kind of mental health crisis where people are feel like, I hear the word despair quite a lot. And some people they're kind of panicking, and I sympathize with some of the specific issues. So for example, I have a lot of friends in the trans community. I have an X on my passport. I'm worried about that. And there's some element of like, I mean, you lose an election and policies change, and that's just kind of how it goes. So, but that feels like kind of a heartless thing to say for someone that's worried about like, something, their medical care being cut off or being transferred to like a men's prison or something. So, yeah, I'm just struggling to make sense of what's going on, because I go on Facebook and I see people acting like we're in Vichy France. And I don't think it's that drastic, but I don't want to blow off people's concerns. So I appreciate this program, but I'm kind of struggling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Zach. And I'll say to you what I say to lots of people: come on, you speak for tens of millions. I think you said it really well. Is the reason you have greater understanding of Trump supporters because of two-way or some other reason?
I grew up all over the country. So I've lived in red states. I've lived in rural areas. I went to a Christian college. And I feel like at that college, we actually had to talk to each other and like persuade each other. I don't feel like we have nearly the kind of political, the quality of political debate in America feels worse than I had in college. So,
I'll let the others. You go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, I mean, I've lived in Greater Boston in the Bay Area for like 20 years now. So, uh, yeah, like I don't feel like like high school was a long time ago and I lived in a rural area. But towards the end of this election, I kept seeing on comments people saying, I cannot fathom how the polls are 50-50 or 48-49 or whatever. And to me, it's like people are trying to dunk on the Trump voters, but you're just dunking on yourself with your own lack of insight into the country you live in. So
Yeah.
I just felt like that is a sign I don't fully understand it. That is a sign I need to like dig deeper and like listen to more centrist and right of center media to understand like what are people's concerns. Looked at a lot of polling. I had no idea immigration was a big concern for a lot of the country until I just looked at it in polling, because it's not something you see in the more left of center media. But yeah, so I mean, I had a specific question, but that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now.
Okay. Do you want to ask your specific question?
Yeah, so a lot of people like putting more specific populations of humans affected aside, a lot of people are very, very freaked out about DOGE. And I looked through all of the cases on Lawfare the past couple days. To me, the most serious ones seem like the OPM ones. Maybe Treasury too, but it seems like Treasury's a bit under control. The OPM ones were like early, probably the access was illegal, and they have like background checks, like FBI background checks and something. So I'm broadly sympathetic to the idea of like looking for waste. I think USAID is not good. I'm not defending that at all. But that the OPM access seems illegal and dangerous. And if if I was going to try to voice people that are freaked out about DOGE, I would say that's one of the more legitimate kind of criticisms. So I'm just curious if you guys have thought about that one.
I'll say briefly to your big point and then that question, and then let the gentleman speak. That one concerns me. It's not a top tier one for me in the sense that I could name 6 others that I'm just as concerned about and want to know more about. But it's in the top tier for me. On your other point, we could talk for hours about it. I think it's unfortunate that any efforts to understand the popularity of Donald Trump by the people on the left was not made 2 years ago. It's not a great time to be trying to engage in that project, just emotionally, and from a oppositional point of view. It's difficult, but I'd urge people to do it for the sake of their mental health and the sake for trying to bring the country together. The president's approval rating is higher than it's ever been. His approval on certain policies is in the 60s and 70s. And I think rather than just saying he's the sea Satan and he's precipitating a constitutional crisis, you should ask yourself, of things he's for that 70% of the country's for, are you for it too? And if you're not, why not? And why do you think 70% of the country's for these things? Congressman.
Well, first, Zach, what college you go to? It sounds like it's a good one.
Gordon College.
Okay, because it just pains me. I used to teach college, and I used to be a professor, which I don't like admitting, but it pains me that a lot of schools you can't talk about these things anymore, and that's what college is for. I mean, I just remember the debates in college. We didn't hate each other, but we went after each other, and so yeah, it's good you went to a place where we're able to do that. We need more of that, but I've understood the appeal of Donald Trump since the beginning. It makes sense to me. I know why he is so appealing. As I said, he's talking about issues that no one else would talk about, but are really on people's minds, and that's important. And I think the outrageous, just harping on every single utterance in the first term was by the left, and just hair on fire every day. I mean, I had to deal with that constantly. I thought Democrats are just playing Donald Trump's game, playing right into it. I think it's good that we haven't heard as much of that now. Look, Donald Trump's going to be president for 4 years. I mean, there's no use being hair on fire. There's no use following every single thing that he says or does. I think focusing on specific things, and Zach, sounds like you're doing that. I have concerns about anyone getting access, say at the IRS. Zach, you're talking about OPM getting in there. Those are concerns that I have, in who's making sure that Musk and DOGE are held accountable on that. But don't just yell and scream about it. We need to ask questions, find out more about it, and it's not going to be helpful to anybody, and it's not going to be helpful to Democrats. To, as Mark says, if there's issues that 60, 70, 80% of Americans agree with Donald Trump on, don't be fighting on those. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense, and that's what the party has done. The party has really worked to kick people like me out who wouldn't go along 100%. I got in trouble for being in the background of a picture of Donald Trump with Joe Manchin in the White House back in 2018. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, Democrats have to get down off of that, or no one's going to be listening to them. And that's the smart thing to do politically.
Gordon College, Alex, since I know you don't know, is north of Boston.
I would know. I love Boston. I had a chance the other day to speak to a women's group, very concerned about Donald Trump and what he was doing to the country. And it was really informative for me, despite my watching MSNBC now and then to try to stay in tune with what's happening across the 50-yard line. And I asked them, what is it about Trump that scares you? And the answer was quick. It was, he's going to take us back and undo all the progress women have made. And that's a journey that American women have been on since they gained the right to vote, since they gained the right to work outside the home, since they gained what many women are concerned about is their right to control their own bodies. And they see Trump as taking them back. And they look at, and they start their political understanding at a point where they say everything was going pretty good until Trump came along. And I think for Trump voters, the story doesn't start there. It starts way before that. I was driving around the other day coming home, and I'm a weak man. I stopped at Burger King. I got a couple of burgers and some fries. Yes, shame me. $31. 2 burgers, Cokes, and fries. I go, whoa, how does a working family go out for a night when you have to spend that? These women, who I think are good, open-minded people, their lives are pretty good. They don't have to worry about that burger. They don't have to worry about $100 to fill a tank of gas to get to work. They can say things like, we can afford to pay higher taxes, even though much of what they have now probably took advantage of tax laws that allowed, nobody stepped up to say, I will pay more taxes than I have to. So I think we're living in 2 very different Americas at the moment. And I think both parties have been feckless in building a better one. And Donald Trump is now trying to dismantle, I think, a lot of what hasn't worked. What we're waiting for, and this is on the Democrat side and the Republican side, is what comes after that. What is going to lift our eyes over the horizon and take us to a better place? Who's going to talk about what is the role of government? Is it to do everything that we don't want to do? Are we that fat and happy? Is it to do the big important things? I keep going back to Ronald Reagan. under Reagan, confidence in government went up because he limited what we asked government to do. So I think some Democrat, maybe some Republicans, going to come along with a new compact, and the Democrats sure need to come up with another tool or 2 or 10 in their toolbox that says, look, the only way to solve problems in this country is not Washington. When they do, I think a lot of the pain and the that I think a lot of us are suffering, I think maybe will diminish a bit.
Yeah. All right. Zach, thank you. Very thoughtful, and we hope you'll come back regularly. Really appreciate it. But we'd love to hear from you on a regular basis as we go forward here. And Congressman and Alex, thank you both. Always love having you both on. Extremely thoughtful, and both of you in sync with the ethos we're trying to establish here. So again, grateful to you both, and hope you'll come back often as well. Thank you. All right. So just a reminder, this week, morning meeting on regularly. I'll be back on tomorrow with Sean and Dan. And then tomorrow night, two-way tonight. Wednesday, super important night for this platform. First, 5 p.m. Eastern time, right before my program. Meghan McCain's Happy Hour. Meghan McCain, you've seen her here. At least a lot of you have. Incredible talent and a lovely person. And it's going to be a great program and a great addition to the ability to for those who want to build community around Meghan and people who love Meghan. Great opportunity. So again, we'll be sending out information in the coming days about how you can be part of it. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube and X, but if you want to be part of the conversation, to sign up to be able to be involved directly in an interactive way, go to twoway.tv/Meghan, and you'll see the sign up information there. I'd urge you all to do that. That night as well, 6 o'clock Eastern time on this program, special episode. We've got a group of young people from around the country, extraordinarily interesting, articulate, diverse group to talk about Elon Musk and DOGE. We all have our own opinions, but this is a younger group of folks, an opportunity to hear from them, live focus group, basically, of how they're experiencing Elon Musk and what they think about him. What they think about him now as compared to what they thought of him before he joined the administration in this role. Done with our colleagues at Look, which is a research firm that we'll tell you more about on Wednesday. Extraordinarily well curated group, so you won't want to miss that. Set your sundials for Wednesday night. And again, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time, I'll be back here with Sean, or 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning with Sean and Dan for the morning meeting. Grateful to everybody who joined tonight. Lots of hands up, including some new folks. Sorry I did not get to, but I thought that the folks who did get called on had really important topics, so we spent a bit of time with them. Thank you again. Have a great evening, and we'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow.